Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, the author of Writing That Gets Noticed, Find Your Voice, Become a Better Storyteller, Get Published, and it is now a course at NYU and an elective towards the journalism certificate. Every week, I speak with novelists, with authors, with writers of every niche to talk about their tips, their tricks, their strategies, and how the sauce is made, including creative advice. I'll talk about essays and articles and share my own experience from 3 decades of publishing. So join me every week and grow your business and build your craft with Freelance Writing Direct. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. And follow along on Substack, where I share special clips for subscribers only at estelleserasmus.substack.com. Hi, it's Estelle Erasmus for Freelance Writing Direct, and today is our pitching episode. And I want to talk to you a little bit about pitches and why you should focus on having a hook to your pitches and sharing information with the editor. And I'll give you a little bit of advice and my Estelle's edge throughout. And so let's go through. Some of these are pitches that were sent to me, and others are pitches that I used in the book, and I want to explain a little bit more about them. And one of them was also from a Writer's Digest, all about the pitch column. But I'm going to share more information that I even share in the pitch column or in the book in this conversation. So let's go to the first one. The first pitch one that I had was talking about diagnosing and evaluating your children's learning struggles. So here's the pitch. I noticed that my daughter was struggling during their reading sessions in class. I didn't know what to do, and I suspected she had a learning disability. I had to hire somebody to test her because the school was not accepting that she had a learning disability just by me saying that I noticed a problem. So I'd like to talk to experts and analyze what you need to do to figure out if your child has a learning disability. Okay, so in principle, that's a great concept, figuring out if your kid has a learning disability. But there are some complications because, number one, in some situations, it's really up to the school. And so the parent can say they think their kid has a problem, but the school will make their own assessment. So there are different permutations. So to me, it's like kind of a couple of different ideas in this one pitch, and I would want to know more. I would want to know how much money the person is shelling out for evaluations if they're doing that. I would want to know what the community process is for doing evaluations. And I'd want to see some sort of anecdote, more than what was just shared on the page, about the actual situation. That would show the editor the writing style. That would show the editor how the writer turns a phrase and the way that they put their voice on the page. And I think in a situation that is framed around a personal story, my Stell's edge would be to actually start the pitch with a scenario talking about very specific issues that the child is having with reading, and then equating it to something that is an obvious kind of match, like what people generally are able to do. And that would entail some research, according to a study on readers by, I'm making this association up, but the American Association of Readers, or the American Library Association. Most people at this age should be able to do this word by then. So it needs more information in this pitch. I would also want to know who the experts are that the writer wants to interview. And I think it would be important if the writer could do some research and find authors who are in the space, who maybe have a book coming out this year or had one last year, talking about childhood and education and diagnostics. So that would be my recommendation for this one. And in an upcoming Substack, I'm going to break it down just like I did here, but in black and white. And then here is another example of the pitch. And this one is what I think of as even more as a listicle. So the idea would be how to put your money into diverse communities. Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting title. And one of my Estelle's Edge is make a compelling title that elicits emotion. So if you're saying how to put money back into diverse communities, that's, I mean, there's some emotion there because you're putting money back, which is implying that it's going to help the communities. So let's go into the pitch. I would like to share a variety of charities, not-for-profit organizations, funds, and events that offer help for diverse communities on holidays and other days, such as Indigenous Peoples Day. And I will focus on the United States, but I may include international applications as well. Okay, I do think this has some possibility. I think an editor may look at it and think of it as an evergreen piece. An evergreen is something that will last forever. Like you could run it around the holidays, you could run it in the summer. Now, a piece like this, it's what I equate to the type of piece that talks about saving money, 50 ways to save money. And with that kind of a piece, you would want to have maybe the latest apps, or you would want to have the latest research that shows something compelling and interesting, or a new statistic, perhaps from the Harris polls, or something that shows how people are looking at money. It couldn't be your average, I'm going to clip coupons. That's how I'm going to talk about saving money, because editors have seen everything and they've seen clipping coupons before. So it would need to really be maybe AI and how AI is working to save money for you, the newest tips and tricks and strategies. That would be very much a service piece. Okay, so this has a money component to it. And it also, which is a strong element to it. But I feel like it could easily become a listicle, which is just really a list of places that you would go to find support for diverse communities. So how do you change it? How do you make it more interesting? One of my suggestions would be to start with 3 or 4 tips. Now, you might say, oh, Estelle, like giving it away. But really, especially if an editor is new to you and you haven't worked with an editor before, you want to show the editor how your execution is going to run. And it's so important to show that through doing things like, here's the tip that I found. And maybe it's something like your bank now I'm making this up, your bank now has a new program. I'm talking to you now. At the end, when you do something like save a cent and make everything 99 cents, you can take that 1 cent and instead of putting it into your bank account, you could put it somewhere else. I think Amazon used to have something like that. That would be a great tip to include to show the editor that you know your stuff. And to make it not a listicle, because as I say in my book, Writing That Gets Noticed, you're not going to make a name for yourself by doing listicles. But what you could do is perhaps you're a member of a diverse community, and you can start with the way that you received money or that you helped someone get money. And so what you're doing is you're putting yourself into the story, and then you're going to share information. And I would absolutely have expert advice in there, because then it's not just you giving the tips, it's somebody with a lot of credibility. And I would also interview someone from one of those diverse communities who could really help with that information. Okay, another pitch. So this is a pitch that was from my All About the Pitch column. And I wanted to bring it out because it's important, because it talks about some of the important elements that I talk about in the book and that I talk about in terms of how to format and send a pitch that works. So this one, the headline said, "The Queer Appeal of Dead by Daylight." And that was, a lot of times people want to do culturally focused pitches, but if you do it, you have to have an element that makes it really work for the reader. And so for this aspect, for this pitch, it was something that was a multiplayer horror game that was in this specific community, and it tied in with an element of the readership. And so the writer pitched, "The development team behind Dead by Daylight acknowledged the lack of diversity in the game's lore. We set our characters' preferences in the past, notably in heterosexual relationships. In a recent Nielsen study, 10% of gamers self-identified as LGBTQ+. In addition, the study found that LGBTQ+ gamers spend 8% more per month. I would love to chat with a few queer Twitch streamers who play Dead by Daylight to get their perspective on this horror game and its current cultural significance. In addition, I could reach out to the development team at Dead by Daylight to see if they have any concrete plans for representation in upcoming game lore." So what's really great about this is the writer included a headline that ties into a community. And that makes the editor's life easier, because it shows what editors are always looking for: something that is going to appeal to their readership. And it also focused in on something that's important to Wired, which is video games and how they support or build a community. And so one of my Estelle's edge is he showed he had access. It's always important, if you have any kind of connections with anybody in the business, of who you are talking to, like an expert or somebody who's in the head of an association or an author. It's important to tell the editor that, because that gives you that additional credibility factor that the editor is looking for. So the writer said they had special entree, and they also shared writing samples. And one of my Estelle's edges, I always recommend that writers share about 3 clips if they have them. If they don't have clips that are related to the subject matter or that show their writing, they can always refer to their own experience or something that they've written that maybe is connected to it. Maybe they've written a white paper on the subject, or maybe they contributed to an academic work in some way. Whatever it is, find that tangential connection and use that. Okay. Here is a pitch. This is a pitch from me, and it ended up in a story being in AARP, the magazine. And so there are several tools and techniques that I used for the pitch that I want to share here. Okay, so I would like to write a story on the subject of fostering a teen. I spoke with, and then I named a person, about her experience, and she would be happy to have me interview her for AARP, the magazine. And then I gave highlights. And what I always recommend is if you have a lot of different elements that you want to share with the editor, I would put it into bullet points. That does several things. It breaks up the page so that the editor is not inundated with a sea of words. And it shows very succinctly through the bullet points the important points that you want to make, that you want to convey about the pitch. And it helps the editor because it just shares that information very quickly. So here is what I wrote in this pitch. She started fostering in March 2008. At first, she signed up to be a temporary emergency resource home. That means she was already trained and certified to be a foster parent, but was specifically tagged for urgent circumstances, such as when a child is first removed from his or her home. The role is temporary until a permanent placement is found, but that's not what happened with her. And then I put another bullet point. Her first charge was a 17-year-old girl who was so engaging that she decided this girl would be the permanent placement. The teenager lived with her for a year and later came back when she was studying for an associate's degree. And then I went to the next point. During the year she first fostered the teen, she was asked by the Division of Child Protection Services to also take in an 11-year-old boy before he was to be returned home to his mother from being at a boys' home. The teen said, "Of course we have to share." And the boy became a wonderful addition to the family for a few months. And then this was another bullet point. 12 years later, she felt it was time to open up her home to another teen. She became the foster parent of a 15-year-old girl in January 2019. She had kept up her certification and offered her home for emergency placement. She feels this kept the child from being placed in a group home, which happens if the DCPP goal of reunification with the national parents isn't met. The court requires parents who have lost custody of their child to meet particular requirements to assure the court the child will return to safe conditions. If the requirements aren't met within a time limit set by the court, the parent may lose their parental rights. She has since become the legal guardian of that teen. So now I set up her scenario, right? And this is a profile. This is what they used to have as a profile of a person with a situation. So in a few succinct bullet points, and it sounds longer in me speaking it than it looked, I gave the gist of it. Then I said, she can speak to the misconceptions out there about fostering. They're dangerous troublemakers. You can't give them what they need. And the satisfaction she has derived from making a difference in young lives. She can also share the steps to take on how to get certified and the different types of fostering available. Now, here is where I share a tip. For example, you can sign up for respite care, which is taking a child for a couple of days a week to give another foster parent a break. Most people don't realize there is a lot of control over choosing the child you take in. You can specify the age, gender, and race of the child you wish to foster. You can also say no to a placement that you don't think would be a good fit, and it won't affect your standing as a resource parent. And then finally, what I ended with, right? This is a very informational profile, but I'm setting it up that this person has a lot to offer, that this person has been in the foster care system more than once and really is a resource and an advocate. And finally, I did something which I call writing to the reader. And usually I advocate writing it in the beginning of the piece, but here I wanted to land the mount with it. I wanted to end with it. And so here's what I wrote in the person's own words. And I had interviewed her. My own teen years were unpleasant, but fostering a teen is fun. I've never had so many laughs. And if you worry like I did that I wouldn't know what I was doing, you'll soon find out how much a child responds to simply providing a stable home with rules, chores, and loving yet firm guidance. Despite the bravado, no teen wants to feel they are on their own with no one behind them. They need and want boundaries, and though they may protest at first, the boundaries make them feel safe and loved. What's rewarding for me is giving a chance to an innocent child at a crossroads, someone who, for no fault of their own, doesn't have a biological parent to provide a home for them. They could easily go down the wrong road, no matter how bright they are, in seeking a place in this world to belong. Seeing a child become stable and thrive under your care is the best reward. And then I said, can I write about this person and her positive journey through foster parenting, a teen, for AARP, the magazine? And they wanted a picture because, again, photography and imagery and the way something looks on the page is important. And I did share the photo, and this did become a story. So I didn't use the name of the person because she is no longer fostering that person. That person became an adult and for privacy matters. But I did want to share that as an example of different ways to do a pitch, to make it effective, to meet the needs of the editor, and to get that clip. So good luck. Please send me your pitches that you want me to look at and analyze for upcoming issues of my Substack or for upcoming episodes of Freelance Writing Direct, and or both. So thank you so much for following along. And I'm so excited to see, because soon everyone will be reading what you are writing. Bye-bye. Follow me at EstelleSErasmus.com on my website and on social media, which is Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Estelle S. Erasmus. And we're now on YouTube for Freelance Writing Direct. Follow along, and soon everyone will be reading what you're writing.